finally good. Hey y'all. For those of you that logged on to the original, we'll hang tight for you to hang up or catch back up with us. Um, Today's topic is co-anglers. Like
backseaters.
Backseaters, co-anglers, stuff that basically, if you're a front seater, what you're looking for, and kind of good advice and good tips if you are a co-angler for what would work best and what you're looking for.
Right.
We're not live yet. Sweet. Somebody's on at least. So to start off this train wreck of a day so far, co-anglers, I would say my number one thing that I would recommend for co-anglers is work out prices, gas price, launch, all that stuff in the beginning.
Yeah.
That would be my number one thing that, like, when it comes to co-anglers and stuff like that, I think the biggest fight that anybody ever complains about is money. Yeah. Or something. How about now? Can you guys actually hear me now?
So again,
Probably.
we're talking about co-anglers, right? So for like many years in the club, I've been a co-angler. I was actually the president of the club as a co-angler for many years. There's a lot of things that you have to consider when you are fishing with somebody, right? Like you're going to fish with somebody new, somebody you've never fished with before. There's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things to think about. One of the main things, like James was talking about earlier, is price, right? Like be expected to share half the cost of gas, right? Like boats don't run on thanks.
Yeah, they don't run on thanks. Some people are better than others. That's why you talk in the beginning.
Correct. And have an understanding.
I fished with people that I swear I was paying half of their boat payment, all the oil, wear and tear on the tires for the trailer. Like, there's certain people who charge a lot more than others.
Correct. But if you're a backseater, be conscious of it. Yeah, have that expectation. And if it's cheaper, then great, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that I don't charge.
Yeah, I'm not one.
That much, right? Because I'm going to be going fishing anyhow.
Yeah.
But it does help when the backseater helps out, right? Like, but back to it. Expect that. Talk to them about that. And when you're talking to them about that, there's other things to talk about. Like, hey, do I need to bring my own life jacket, right?
Yep.
That is a huge thing. You got to have a life jacket in the boat for everybody in the boat. Does that boater have an extra life jacket for you?
And if you are a small person or a large person,
have the right size.
Right.
But those are little things. There's other things to think about also in that whole conversation that you're having with them. Do you have an ice chest? How much tackle space is there, right? What can I bring?
Is there a back seat?
Those are small things, but they are major things when you're going out and fishing with somebody for 8 hours, right? Like, if you're somebody that's not going to doesn't want to stand for 8 hours, ask them, do you have a back seat, right? Like,
yeah,
that is something to be talking about. But all this conversation should be had prior to going to the water, right?
Yep.
Another part of that is, how are we going to be fishing?
Yeah. What's your
plan?
Yeah. What's your style? What's your plan? What's your ballpark? There are certain times, like, so for instance, big tournaments, a pro is not gonna wanna, or a front seater, a boater is not gonna wanna share everything because he's not sure who you're talking to to give stuff away. So you just find out, hey, are you fishing fast? Are you fishing, like, ask very, very vague things. Like, are you fishing deep? Are you fishing shallow? Are you fishing fast? Are you fishing slow? And then just come up with stuff yourself that would kind of cover those situations.
Or complement what they're doing, right? You know, fishing on the back of somebody's boat for so long, like I have, and I even when I go with James and we shoot the videos, I'm fishing on the back of the boat, right?
Yeah.
Like, technically, we fish on the front, but technically, like, I'm bringing my stuff and putting it in his boat, right? So
Yeah.
I'm bringing, and I try to figure out, first off, is what I like to throw for what body of water we're fishing, and then try to minimize down as much as possible to go, even though
keeping in mind that most of the time your boater is probably going to have whatever it is. Like myself, I don't care if my co-angler goes into my tackle and picks out tackle.
Yeah.
I don't care. It doesn't bug me at all.
I do it to them all the time.
Go for it. In fact, there's times where I tell them to go in there and grab something, or I have them pick up my rod. That is not the same
for everybody.
For everyone.
No.
There's people where they only want you on the back. You don't come up to the front unless you're netting a fish or helping in some way if you've been asked up front. And then there's people like me and him that I actually prefer you to be on the front.
Yeah, because then as a boater, I don't have to worry about the back, right? Like we could go, and if I do ask you to come up with me, don't stand at the back of the deck.
Yeah.
Stand right up next to me.
Yeah,
the closer you are to me, the better everything is, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so you gotta, the way I look at it as far as the coming up front is, if we're this far away from each other, I cannot hook you with a rod.
Right.
If you're on the other end of this couch from me, the rod's 6 foot something, and you're 6 foot away. Where's that hook gonna be?
Yeah.
In your arm.
Or head
or whatever. But if you're this far away from me, it doesn't matter what I do. And then the other thing is, when I go back to cast, you know, because you're right there, where I'm casting, what I'm doing. And it also plays into, I'm looking at holes or whatever we're casting to, and I just watched you pick off 3 of them, but you skipped one. I'm going to make sure I hit that one.
Correct.
Whether it's front of that, but that's why I run the front, where I prefer both people to be on front, is because you can pick apart water much more efficiently than somebody who's in the back. Now, I will say that there are definitely co-anglers who are scared to be in the back, or scared to be in the front, period.
Correct. I wouldn't say scared, but maybe intimidated.
Well, when you set the hook on a punch and it goes,
or a frog.
and next thing you know, you turn around and they're on the back deck.
Or a frog.
Or frog.
Yeah, been hit by frogs.
I've been hit.
Yeah.
I've been hit, and I've hit others.
Yeah.
With frog wise, not punch wise. Punch, I always swing away from everyone. And I'll actually, if I'm in a bad situation or whatever it is, like a bad angle, I'll actually tell my co-angler to switch sides. Yeah. That way, when I swing, I know it'll go either to me or past everyone.
Right. But with this whole talk, right, like, there's things that you can do, and you got to prep to go, right? Like, bring enough clothes, right? Depending on, look at the weather. What's the weather going to do? Bring enough clothes, right? See if they have a spot for it, right? Like, I've fished with some people that have really small boats where my tackle's sitting with me. I don't have anywhere to put clothes, but.
And if you take a jacket off, you're putting it back on for the run to somewhere else, so you're not holding onto the jacket along with your tackle.
Correct. So that's another thing to think about. And then also, how many rods are you going to bring?
Yeah, MLF, I think it's MLF, one of those ones for the co-anglers, they say 5 rods. You can pretty much cover everything you're going to fish across with 5 rods. And if you have a clue of what's going on, you can cover it with 5 rods easily. Yeah. If you are going to bring more than 5 rods, ask. Like, for instance, for me, I have an entire rod locker that's empty. It has my Kitex in it. Yeah. But that's it. I'll tell my co-anglers, like, hey, the back compartment, you have a whole back compartment all to yourself. You'll get most of another back compartment, and you have the whole rod locker. Bring what you want. That's up to you. But I fished with people, like he's saying, you don't have a rod locker, you don't even have a tackle locker, you got nothing. So that's when you really need to skimp down.
Tying your tackle box, the rear seat.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Sketch.
I know people that I have literally gave them a whole box and they still put their tackle box on the back seat.
Yeah.
They just prefer it that way.
Yeah. But those are things to think about and to talk to them about, like how much room you have. And while we're talking about rods, right? Like, be prepared to talk to your boater about, like, hey, let me know if we're going to run. Like, if you're somebody that, you're busting out all your rods and you got stuff out, what we call a garage sale.
Yard sale.
Garage sale, whatever, right? Like, you got stuff everywhere. Let me know in advance. Hey, this is going to be the last cast here, right?
Yeah.
So I know that I need to start putting my stuff away before we run, right? I don't want to hold up the boater, right? Like,
and then also as a coworker, as a co-angler, pay attention to what, like if you see that guy clipping down his rods, start paying attention if he's going to grab another rod. If he stands up without grabbing a second rod, he's probably going for the trolling motor. Start getting ready. Like there's those cues that'll come into that. And that kind of comes down to the tidiness in the back. Now I will say this, there is a co-angler in the club that can have a yard sail in the back of the boat. And there is like 3 boxes open, stuff on top of the lids of the boxes. There is stuff everywhere. And by the time I put that rod down and clip it in and grab the trolling motor and pull it up onto there, I don't even make it off the top deck and he's got all that packed up, boxed up, and sitting in the seat with his life jacket on.
Yeah.
And he's fast, like super fast.
Yeah.
But he pays attention to that kind of stuff. He sees the cues, and I usually will try and give him a heads up, like, hey, we're probably gonna leave here soon. Like, I'm not feeling it, it's time to go. The other thing about him is he's a really, really good co-angler. He also has that feeling of it's time to go.
Right.
So he's already feeling that it's the time to go. Now he sees that, like he's already got a game plan set up in his head of how he's going to pack everything up, and he's forethoughting all of that stuff.
Right.
That is a dream list. I will say that there are definitely co-anglers that do not do that. And
I believe I might have talked to that guy today. We're trying to get him on.
He's the co-angler that asked me. I asked him what seat he want. He said, I don't want any seat. And then he brought a folding chair and moved the folding chair around on the back deck. Huh. And I cannot complain because he got, I think it was big fish of the day.
Yeah.
And we did really good that tournament. I told him he could bring that chair any day he wants, all the time. Does not matter to me. It worked out.
But for him, so he knows most of the people in the club. He was saying some of the things that he looks for or thinks about. Like if he's going to fish with somebody that, for instance, he was saying James. If he's going to fish with James, he knows James likes to cover water. So he's going to bring his tackle to complement what James is doing, right? Like he's not going to throw something super light drop shot because he's never going to hit the bottom if James is covering water.
Yeah.
So he's going to throw something like a football jig or something Carolina
heavier,
rig or something heavier that's going to get down to the bottom faster, and then complement how James is fishing.
And then like other things he'll throw is like spinnerbait, lipless, stuff that when I'm throwing a rig, because I think most of the time I end up fishing with them. Well, I can't say that. It's summertime, wintertime. I've fished with them all sorts of different times. It's really good co-angler. But he will, like, if I'm just like, hey, we pull into a spot, I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw an A-rig. And he's like, okay, cool. And literally as we're going down, he's rotated through 5 rods, and I've made 4 casts. Like, he's just, whatever's in front of him, he is hitting, and he's just trying to find the open holes, like I talked about earlier, trying to pick out those open holes that I'm leaving open, and then he sees a bush, hits the bush. Well, now there's not another bush. Moves on to, there's some rock patch. So now he picks up a different rod, throws that rock patch. Like he's keeping his mind and his wheels turning at all times.
Yes, and to be a good backseater, that's what you really need to do. You need to figure out what can you do behind this person, right? If you're not Like for me, if I'm fishing with James, I'm just going to go to the front of the boat and I'm going to keep up with him.
Yeah.
But there's other times that you fish with somebody that, say if they do have a smaller boat, there's not enough room for 2 people on the front of the boat. So you need to stay on the back of the boat. What can I do back here, right? No matter what position that person puts the boat in, how can I fish? I need to be ready for that. And how am I going to catch fish? Sometimes doing something like this, you might catch way more fish than the front boater.
Or the kicker.
Yeah, or that kicker, right? Like one of the other things that he was talking about is if you're going in, like say you're going into a cove and you fish it on this side and you're going in, right? He's fishing the shallow side. When you turn around coming out, he's going to be like, you know what? I've already fished this side. Let me fish the opposite side. Let me fish the deeper side and fish the deeper side. And again, maybe catching more fish. Maybe he gets that kicker, right? Like he always adjusting and always
ad-libbing, just
Ad-libbing.
always on a swivel, never get anything stuck in your head.
Right. And that will make you have a great amount of fun. And again, fishing team tournaments especially, I don't care who's catching the fish. I don't care if the boaters catch. I don't care if my backseater's catching the fish. I don't care. If we're catching fish, we're catching fish. We're doing a great job. I will be the front boater. I'll be on the front. I'll be your best deckhand. I will net every fish. And that's another thing. Like, be prepared to be netting, right? Like, no matter what. Like, it's a joke when we vote somebody in at the club. Can they net, right?
Yeah.
Because they had to fish with somebody, and if they say yes, all right, you're in. Like, netting is a great or a good deal.
And we can always
skill.
teach netting.
Yeah, we could teach you how to net, not a problem. Like it.
If it's with that whole netting thing, right? If you aren't familiar with netting, and you get into there, ask them. So for instance, one of the guys in our club prefers if you put the net in the water, and then I'll bring the fish to you, right? And then you get other people who are like, don't leave that net in the water, just scoop it when it comes time.
Yeah.
You know, like, or there's little things like if it's tailed towards you, don't net. If it heads towards you, net it, right? There's like all these little things, but you can ask all those things.
Right.
If you aren't familiar,
or just ask them, how do you like it? You don't have to say, hey, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
How do you like people netting your fish, right?
Yeah.
Do you want the net in the water? Do you want me to scoop it? What do you want, right? Like that's things to think about, right? And then just be ready. Or something that I do for like James, when I'm coming up with the net, before I'm even getting there, what side?
Yeah.
What side do you want me on? What side are you planning? Because for me, I don't like switching sides with the fish, right? Like I don't like changing angles.
Rod angle side.
Rod angles, right?
Yep.
If I'm bringing the fish and I'm bringing it one way, that's the way I'm going to bring it. If that means I'm going around the front of the boat, I'm coming around the front of the boat, right?
Or if you're going around all the way to the back of the boat, just to keep it. If it's coming in wrong and it's not time to net, that fish is too hot, keep going around, right?
Yep.
Like, but that's to communication, right? To listening to, if you're on the co-angler side, we're going to do another one on the boater side. But if you're on the co-angler side, listen to them, ask them how they want it, ask them the questions. Like, which side are you going, right? Like, as he's grabbing the net and running back up, or I'm grabbing the net, I'm like, which side? Yeah. So that's all I ask, which side? And then he says right or left. And then I set up on that, and then there's times where you have to switch back. Yeah. But that open communication and paying attention to that, like if you see that fish coming towards the boat, like coming right at the nose, but it's swinging one way, more than likely he's going to ask for that direction.
Yeah. Another thing is if you are coming up to net, try not to get right underneath the person that has the fish, right?
Yeah.
If you get underneath that person
and that fish dogs, you pop it. Instead, be the co-angler that says, hey, big boy, take a step forward because I don't know why you're battling a fish standing on this gunnel when the fish is on that side.
Well, you know. But
for
yeah,
any of you that don't know this, there's a Delta
Clear Lake.
video. I think it's called like 5 species or something
No,
like
that's
that.
Clear Lake.
Clear Lake, sorry, Clear Lake video. 5 species one day or something like that. There's a really big fish that would have helped us a lot in that tournament. That I went to go behind him, couldn't go behind him, and then instead of telling him to step forward, I just said, "Oh, I'll just go underneath." And as soon as I went underneath, that fish surged and gonzo.
Yeah, it happens. So the other thing is like sometimes like if a big fish, you have a big fish on it and it's out and you set up underneath that person and that fish is starting to come up to jump and that angler's wanting to put that rod tip down to try to keep that fish from jumping. And if you're underneath them, they can't go down with it. So the possibility of them losing that fish increases at that point in time.
I try to stay within striking distance.
Correct.
And then when that fish actually comes up, I can see color. That's when I move in and then go from there. And if that fish does something funky and it goes out, I back up again. I don't just stand there. I come completely out.
Yeah, let them have some room and let them. That way they could fight that fish.
Yeah. Am I an amazing net guy? No. I'm actually kind of horrible at it.
No.
But I try my best.
I've knocked some fish off for him too.
Yeah. He's definitely...
Maybe on purpose sometimes, but...
Speared him. You know, when the net's backwards and you're holding onto the net side and hitting it with the stick side?
Yeah.
Maybe not that bad, but yeah.
It might have been on purpose, but yeah. You know, those types of things and being willing to do whatever you want for them. There's a couple rules as a boater that I tell my co-angler, and simple rules. I tell them, one, take care of my boat like it's yours, right? I don't try not to spill anything on the carpet, right? Like try to take care of the upholstery. Just take care of it like it's your boat, right? Don't just throw stuff all around on it.
We understand stuff happens.
Stuff does happen, 100%. But treat it like it's your boat, right? And then my other second rule that I have is don't hook me.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've been hooked on the front of a boat before. It's not fun.
I don't think I've been hooked horribly.
I've been hooked horribly where I had to push the hook through. It was in the back of my arm, through the shirt, and I had to push the hook all the way through, cut it off, and to pull it out.
I've been hit on the top of the head with a swim bait.
Oh, yeah, that felt good.
Full cast, and it luckily was a soft body swim bait, and it just like felt like somebody just smacked the top out of you.
Yeah, but those are my two rules. Other than that, for me, there's other people, 100% boaters, that don't want you to come up to the front of the boat. I don't care. Again, hey, I'll let you run the front of the boat. And then, two, once you start getting comfortable and you start learning and you're getting better at angling and familiar with boats, I'm telling you, like for me, when I knew that it was time for me to buy a boat, is when I would go fish with these boaters and they'd be like, hey, where are we going? And I'm like,
when they start asking you for shots. That was back when I made the switch. That's when I made the switch, is when I felt like I understood enough, which at the time I did not understand enough.
Still don't. But
I felt like I understood enough that I could call my own shots and I could actually go different routes from who I was fishing with.
Correct. So starting to do that, and then the anglers, the boaters were actually being like, hey, Brian, you run the front of the boat. Like they'd drive there and be like, you got the front. And they'd go to the back and they'd let me do what I do in the front. And I was like, all right, it's probably about time for me to become that boater, right? Like I've learned enough that these people are trusting me with their boats to fish tournaments.
Yeah, and I will say that is a cool feeling if you're a co-angler. That there's a gentleman that used to be in the club, since passed away, John Myhall.
Yeah.
Every time we went fishing, I'd launch the boat and I'd walk down to it and he'd be sitting in the passenger seat. And I'm like, hey, don't you? And he goes, nope, where are we going?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And we'd take off and we'd fish the whole day and he'd just sit in the back or sit in the passenger seat and he'd be happy as a clam. And I'm like, John, you want the front? He goes, no, you're doing great. Keep on going.
Yeah. That's when you know when you should be moving up. But before that, like if you are on the back, again, I'll be your best deckhand, right? I'll net all your fish. I will fizz all your fish, right? Like if you guys don't know that.
and if you don't know how to, just say something. Like when it comes to that, like I guess you could say like everybody is out there to learn in one way or another.
Correct.
Don't be afraid to just ask. Like, hey, if I'm a boater and I think you know how to fizz a fish, I'm like, hey, don't forget to fizz that fish.
If you don't know how,
If you don't know how, just say, okay, I don't know how to.
can you show me?
Yeah, show me real quick.
Yeah. Don't be like, hey, I don't know how, I'm not doing it. Hey, can you show me how to do it? And I'll get the next one. Right? Be willing to learn it and do it, right? Like if he's willing to show you how to do it, pay attention, look what he's talking about, and watch him do it, and then move on, right? Like, and try it the next time.
Yeah. I mean, even if you watch him do it a couple of times before you try it, and while he or she is watching you do it, then you can go from there. What's that? Great advice. Never be afraid to ask questions about anything while you're out. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
always
John Kurgan on there. Future or current star of straight hooked fishing.
Legend
Legend video.
Legends.
If you guys have not seen that Legend video, go back to last week's video. Awesome conversation.
Yeah.
One of many to come with other legends from the club. But yeah, great video.
Another
Definitely
great guy to go fishing with. Another great guy
to learn from.
He'll be he'll be a front seater. He'd be a back seater. Great time. Very positive attitude all the time. Sorry, John, that we're talking about you, but very, very positive attitude. I don't care if we're not even catching fish. I've been out there with them, and we catch dinks all day during a tournament, and we had a great time doing it still, right?
I had a Grinder Berryessa tournament. I don't remember. Was it February? Yeah, that tournament sucked. The weekend was great. The fishing sucked.
No, the fishing was really good that weekend.
Yeah, for the one person that caught fish that weekend.
No, we caught.
Yeah, you guys were the only people.
No, there's
everybody else struggled.
There's another boat that put 15 pounds in, and I just put 17 pounds in.
Yeah, but everybody else struggled.
Yeah, true.
Everybody missed the boat on that one.
But very positive, right? Like, be positive, right? And then another thing, like talk to them. Like when I was on the back seat and I was thinking about stuff, I'm thinking about like fishing, right? Like. And I want to, as a backseater, I want to pick things out of that front seater, that boater, right? Yeah. I want to pick his brain.
Not everybody talks. You can always feel the mood and find out. Like if you've asked 16 questions and their answers are all like one word answers, they're or super short answers, probably just need to lay off of it.
Yeah. But if you're a backseater and you're fishing with multiple people, there's a lot of stuff to learn. And I'm not saying that you have to learn it and be the exact same, right? Like me and James fish all the time. We are not exactly the same. We like different rods. We like different line. We'll throw the same exact bait.
We approach the water different ways. We may fish the same areas at times, but we're fishing it completely different.
Right. But we could fish side by side with each other and break it water down, right? But you'll learn little things from everybody, right? And then hopefully put that together, and then this is your style, right? This is your style that you're gonna fish with, right? Because you will learn a ton of stuff from all these boaters. And even if you're not asking them questions, just watching what they're doing, right?
Yeah, what they're pointing at, why they just think deeper into that. Like, why did we move to this bank? Or just ask them, like, hey, what kind of structure are we fishing? Like, when you pull onto a spot, all right, what are we looking at? That's back to the guy we talked about earlier that had his own seat, Mike Rivera. We'll pull into a spot and he's like, all right, what are we looking at? And I'll just be like, okay, we got a rock hump that comes out with a 4-foot drop. They should be in this area. And he's like, okay, cool, let's get them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's times where I have definitely spun out fishing with Mike, and his positivity and his like, no, we're going to get him, has actually like pulled me back out of the spiral and get you back into...
You spiral?
No, never. Never spiral at least 3 times a day. Never. But his positivity will like pull you back out of it and get you back onto the plane where you need to go. Get your head set back into where you're going.
There's a lot of times that one of my questions, like if I'm thinking about something as a backseater, I do it as a front seater too. Hey, what are you thinking? What are you thinking right now?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I will ask my co-angler, like, all right, what do you think we're doing wrong? Or what do you think, like, why are they here? Why are they not here?
Or what are we missing?
And don't be afraid to say something when they say it. Now, you are co-angler. If you say, we need to go to that rock right now and we need to do this, you're still a co-angler. That's back to you might be time to get into your own boat situation. But just throw things out there. Like if it sticks on the wall, there might be something that your boater did not think of.
Right.
But if you've said it 4 times and they still haven't done it,
it's not going to happen.
Just leave it be. That's not their style. They don't have the confidence in it. A lot of the times you got to learn what your person has. Like there's a guy that when I was co-angler that he preferred to throw drop shot. And he preferred to go slow, and us fishing wintertime and stuff like that. So you would just kind of think of other areas that you could drop shot or do that. And then I also knew when I fished with him, that's kind of going to be the style. So you get like that mindset and thinking into that.
That's like what we talked about earlier, knowing how they fish, right? Like if you know how they fish, the problem is if you never fished with somebody before and you don't know how they're going to fish, right? Like that's why you ask them ahead of time. All right, hey, what's your ideas? Like, are we going to be moving fast? Are we going to be in deeper water, shallow water? Are we going to be?
Yeah, I mean, really,
going slow.
Depth of water, and then that's relativity, right? Like somebody says we're going to fish deep water at Clear Lake, they might mean like 12 foot.
Yeah.
And then like, so for instance, Delta, the best co-angler bait on the Delta,
Cinco.
It's going to be really hard to throw a chatterbait off the back of the boat. If you're actually physically on the back, it's going to be hard to throw the chatterbait. You can little short shots into the toolies.
Depending on how far out they are.
You can do it again with, I mean, really any of those active baits.
Right.
But as far as being able to chuck and wind and fish outside weed lines, it's going to be hard, right? Like you're not going to be able to run that outside weed line. Another thing would be punching, depending how fast they're going. Your punches may be spread out, but you can punch with that. A lot of, realistically, it's going to be like weedless baits, underspin.
That's another thing to think about. Like
frogs,
what you're
stuff
saying
like
about
that.
like weedless baits of something like that is if you're a backseater and you're dragging way out behind the boat,
like way,
and you keep on getting hung up,
way back
you're
there.
probably going to need to either be willing to break it off or start changing and start casting in a spot to where you're less likely to hang up. I don't like, as a backseater, I didn't like telling the boater all the time, hey, I'm hung up.
Yeah.
You go back and get me,
there's,
right? Like,
there's
some that don't.
There are certain days where, like, so for instance, I'm on the boater side, and I know, like, I'm fishing Lava Rock area in Clear Lake.
Yeah.
Chances are you're breaking off a lot or you're getting hung up a lot. And it depends on how the fish are setting up, depends on whether I'll go get it or not. Like, I'll tell co-anglers, like, if I turn the boat around and go back and pick it up, all I'm doing is giving myself more area to cast. Like we're fishing like a rock flat or something like that. Like going back and getting your baits, not going to break anybody's heart or do anything wrong. But there are certain days where, like, so for instance, you're fishing a rock hump or something.
Yeah.
I will tell my co-angler, if I remember, if you get hung up, you're breaking it off. And the same thing for me. If we're getting hung up, we're breaking it off. Because as soon as we pull into there, those fish are going to be funky for a half hour, 45 minutes. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah.
And kind of, as a co-angler, kind of ask those questions, right? Like, hey, is this something like kind of, you know, like, hey, I'm hung up or something like that. And then if the guy says, you know, hey, break it off, then you're breaking it off.
That's what's going to happen.
So then at that point, I'm gonna throw something a little cheaper, or be willing to break it off. One of the two.
Have plenty of drop shot weights. That's another thing to think about though too. As a backseater, like for me, I had different weights, right? Depending on if that's what I wanted to do and I wanted to throw drop shot, I'm gonna have the 3/16, the quarter, the half ounce. I have half ounce drop shot weights, just because if I need to get down to the bottom because the person's going faster.
Yeah, the person's got it on like 6 and you're trying to drag a drop shot.
Right. If I'm trying to drag a drop shot and that's what I want to do, I'm going to carry those heavier weights, right, and be able to get down there as a backseater, right? Like, and again, I switch back and forth all the time. I don't care if I'm the front seater, if I'm the back seater. I don't care. I'll do it, right? Like, but those are things to think about. Getsy says adapting is key.
Yeah,
100%. Right. Be willing to adapt. There's another thing as a backseater that I'm going to pay attention to too is if my boater catches a fish, I'm going to ask him, what color was it, right? Like if he's throwing a drop shot, what color are you throwing?
Yeah, what information? In a team tournament atmosphere, it helps a lot.
Right. What color?
Because then you're going to like, this is where I caught it, this is what I did. Like you're going to share way more in a team tournament.
Right.
And you can kind of, now okay, so the fish was caught here, fish was caught there. So now when the front seater misses one of those spots, to go in behind him and throw that spot.
And if they're catching something, right, say they're catching it all on the Sorry Steve, right? I'm going to rotate through some other baits that are similar.
Yeah, going to like a Morning Dawn,
or
depending on
MM3
the weather,
or something like that. That I think that would work, right? That complements, or there was a time that I was fishing with a guy and I was the backseater. Never fished with him before. We were fishing the Delta. We were going, and he was throwing a Cinco, and he said, "We're going to be throwing Cincos." I said, "All right, cool. I have no problem throwing Cincos." And he's going through, and he's throwing a peg Cinco in like 10 foot of water. And I'm like, why are you throwing it out there? But all right, he's really good. And I throw in shallow, and he goes, it's like 6 inches deep there. Why you throw it up there? And I'm like, because there could be a fish up there. And he's, right? Like,
yeah.
He's giving me that. And I throw in there again. I throw in another spot shallow, boom, I hit a fish. And I was like, all right. Like, he's like, man, you caught a fish in that shallow water? I'm like, yeah. It happens. And we kept going.
Yeah.
And I started rotating through some baits, and I found a bait that started working. And I started sticking fish, right? And I was flipping a creature bait with a Texas rig, weight on there like a quarter. And I was flipping it in shallow water, and I was getting smoked. He started asking me, hey, his name was Steve, the name of Sorry Steve.
Screen door? Oh, Steve. Sorry Steve? The reason why Steve. Sorry Steve has his name?
Yeah, Sorry Steve. But so I was throwing this bait, and he's like, what is that? And I tell him, hey, it's watermelon candy. It was a Reaction Innovations Kinky Beaver. And I said, it's watermelon candy. Or watermelon red.
Watermelon red.
You
don't flip watermelon candy.
Watermelon red. And he was going through baits, and he was doing like a brush hog that was similar, and he just wasn't getting the same action. And I'm like, hey, I got plenty of them. I got 2 packs. Take some. He's no. And by day 2, I just threw a pack to the front of the boat, and he actually started using them. And we started.
And he still uses them to this day.
Yeah, he still uses them, and they still work.
In the video that just came out.
Yeah.
He probably was using it in that, the one that just came out like a couple hours ago.
I was. That fish that, did you put that in the video, the fish that came off?
I don't think that one made it in the video. It should have, because I
dumped a fish on Sunday. I was using that bait. I basically maxed out the rod, I think. And I hooked a fish, it was wallering, spit the hook out, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
How did I lose this fish? Like, I don't think I did anything wrong.
Great news is it was on video.
It was on video.
Look it over.
So later that day, we pulled it up and slow-moed it and looked at it, and the rod was bent all the way down through the handle, and the top third of the rod was pointing straight at the fish. There was no more rod left. So when it was wallowing and shaking its head, the rod had no give. It was just locked in because it was a big enough fish.
And it just ripped out.
That sucks for a tournament.
That goes back to a whole rod conversation.
A whole rod conversation.
I don't even know how to. So there's like a whole like rod bend thing that I'd really like to do, but I don't know
how it would come out.
We touched a little bit of it when we went over the rods we had. I just don't know how to make it actually come out enough where people could understand why there's a difference in what you're looking for.
But that rod, for the rod that I was using, it worked really good for like football head, the small like football heads.
Lighter wire.
Lighter wire, exactly.
Lighter wire, open water.
Open water,
Yeah.
Great rod. That bigger hook for like a jig rig, that thicker wire hook.
Trying to get them out of the weeds. There's just
it's just not enough. So I need to buy a new rod or have somebody on here buy a new rod that I think is watching. I need a new rod.
Yeah, it's just $100.
Yeah.
Or maybe one.
Are you on there? Are you watching?
200 maybe.
I need a new rod.
You know.
Think she'll.
Maybe you can buy one when you're on vacation.
Well, I'm on vacation next week.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could fly with the new rod, and I don't know if they have good rods over there.
They probably don't.
Probably not.
They only have like 3 areas with bass.
Do they have bass over there?
Yes, they 100% do.
Oh.
They 100% do. The answer, I think not. So, I mean,
really
realistically, when you're, you got at least a week to hold your breath.
Yeah.
When you're a co-angler, you're trying to keep your tackle light, right?
Yeah.
So, in that, you have like so for instance, blanket, robo worms, okay?
Yeah.
Robo worms, you kind of have to know, if you fished with a person before, you know what colors they prefer.
Right.
Now, I will say this. If him and I are fishing together in a team tournament, and I'm catching them on Sorry Steve, unless I am just raking them in, he's not throwing Sorry Steve. He's throwing a different color.
Or different.
Vice versa, same thing. I don't want to match his color. Because if we're throwing to the same school, we're going to stay there long enough that nobody's catching fish anymore, right? So why would I throw the same color as him and wear out those fish faster? Now, when you come into, when that color stops working, now you're going to be throwing different colors, but you're wondering, okay, did the school just shut off? Or are we just throwing bad colors?
Right.
But if one person is throwing in there and getting them to react, you know the school is firing because you already have a good bait, and you keep throwing in other colors until something works. Now when the first color stops working, you have a second color to lean to. And while that second color stops working, you've hopefully found a third color or a third tactic or a third whatever. And you can use the teamwork part of it to leapfrog through there. Yeah, changing styles, changing colors, changing whatever.
Changing the weight of the fall sometimes.
You can have one, you can have a rod once you buy her one. And then I was going to say, we did just get her a rod at the frog tournament.
We got her 2 rods. She
Weigh-in.
won one at the
frog tournament.
At the banquet. Oh, she won one at the banquet.
Oh,
it was my money that I put in.
Look at that.
So that actually counts, right?
So now she's got 2 rods. So really, you're good for 2 rods now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you basically paid in dues for 2 rods.
Getsy says,
see?
That sounds like Brian just got the green light to buy a new rod.
Getsy agrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, Getsy agrees. All arguments from here on are invalid. Two rod order coming up. See, Kurgan even agrees.
Yeah. Sounds.
That's a 4-to-1.5 vote. Well, they're halves each, so what? It's like 4-to-1 vote.
I definitely need a new rod.
But when it comes to, I don't even remember. But don't try and if one person on that boat is sticking them on, let's say, a jerkbait or chatterbait or whatever it is, more than likely a second person standing up there is not going to be able to stick them just as good as that first person.
No.
So let that first person do their damage and figure out how to complement that.
Yeah. So like what you're saying, like going down a bank, say like the Delta, if the front person's throwing a chatterbait and he's hitting them, throw that single behind him.
Yeah.
Right? Like pick apart every little tule clump, every little spot hole, throw that Cinco in there, because if he's catching the fish or she is catching the fish on the front of the boat, you could catch that big fish dropping that.
And even if you're, so let's say you're with let's say you're with a boater that you don't know how they fish or something, and they've kind of told you like, hey, you get the back half of the boat. Like, you figured out there is a back half, right? When they are throwing that front line, running that chatterbait or running that whatever down that straight line, ask them, hey, do you mind if I punch a little bit ahead? Like, I'm not messing with your fish. Can I do this? 90% of the time, if they're on that bite, they don't care. They're going to be, I have my fish are right here, you do what you want. As far as me in a team tournament, I don't care if you cast over my line.
No.
That's not going to be a thing, right? Like, I am completely okay with that to a certain reasonable respect, right? Like, if I throw a Cinco out there and then you throw a Chapo over the top of me, okay, yeah, you're going to get hung up.
Yeah.
But if you're standing this far away from me and you huck your Chapo and it crosses me, all we do is change sides.
Yeah.
And now you can bring your Chapo right down.
It's a Getzy and Lau dance.
They got a little bit of a little solo moment that they had in the 4-hour video.
Yeah. It's a dance, but you just switch sides,
but
right?
you just change sides.
No big deal.
When you've been fishing long enough, like him and I fishing with each other, we don't ever say anything. Like, we just switch sides. Like, if I have my line out and I watch him sail one over the top of me, I just already change sides.
Yeah.
Like, or vice versa, right? Same way, either way. And then the same thing is like when I walk away from the trolling motor. That was a special moment.
It was a special moment.
And we definitely, I'm pretty sure I put him on big screen for that.
Yeah, he might have. I did it. I'm telling you, I did it a bunch with Steve, fishing in the Delta, because we were both fishing in the front of the boat, and we'd throw, and we just, if the lines crossed, we just switch sides and keep going. Never slowed down, never even talked about it. Let's just move and go.
If I'm walking away from the trolling motor, I assume he is going to just keep going at whatever speed we've been going, right down the bank. If I feel like there's something like that's coming up, the reason why I walked away, like I all of a sudden went, oh crap, there's trees there now, and I wasn't paying attention, I'll say like, all right, hold tight, I'm grabbing something for the trees.
Yeah.
Like, I will say something like, hey, just cut off of it. I have co-anglers that I tell them, hey, you got the front of the boat, and they literally walk up to the trolling motor and they hit spot lock.
Yeah.
Like, we're going down the bank and then they just hit spot lock. Like, they don't want the responsibility of the trolling motor.
Yeah.
And that is not a bad decision. Like,
I've done that too, where like I'm going down the bank and I know the boater, like I'm the backseater fishing with Steve. He's going down and he's catching fish, right? And he breaks off or something. He's like, hey, take the front. Well, I'll go up, take the front. I might not spot lock it, but I'm not going to go as fast as he was going. I'm going to slow down because I know that he's got a hot hand, and I want him to touch this water that we're coming into. Right?
Yeah, if you by the time he reties and you're a mile down the bank,
right,
you just blew through a bunch of stuff.
Right.
But if you kind of linger back, lay back, kind of fish slow, pick stuff apart, or team tournament wise, if you have that same rod, like he's throwing a chatterbait, you pick up a chatterbait, still work it slow, but work that column for that little bit of area while they get retied.
Right. None of it is a bad idea. You could keep going. If I tell you to take the front, maybe it's because I'm digging something else out, or
I'm just going back to take a nap.
Well, he does take.
I've done that before.
It's called millering.
Yeah, I don't even put a rod out.
It wasn't even from him. But
my dad was notorious for being on the front of the boat. He goes, take the boat for a second. And then you go up there on the front, and then all of a sudden you turn around, and he's laid down, dragging a split shot, laying across the bench seat, and passed out.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, he'll literally be like, getting up, fighting the fish. You net the fish, he casts back out again, lays back down. And then outfishes you.
Do that dance again, though, what you just did.
And then outfishes you while you're fishing the front, and he's just dragging.
Yeah. That was a great dance. I've actually seen his dad do that dance.
It's the old man shuffle, trying to get back up in there.
It's awesome.
I say old man because
he's your old man.
He really wasn't that old.
He's your old man, though.
He's old now, and he doesn't even mess around with rods anymore when he takes a nap now.
No, now he's got spot lock. He just spot locks it and takes a nap.
I have definitely done that fishing solo.
You've done it with me. It's nap time.
Yep. No, I've definitely fished solo, like pulled into a cove, spot locked, and laid down.
But yeah, definitely talk to your boater. Definitely he was definitely
Kurgan fished with them.
The master of the sleep and drag.
Yep, that's what they call Miller, and was dragging a split shot.
Yep, while you're asleep. But definitely talk to your boater and find out what the plan is, what we're going to be doing, what your thoughts are, where we're going to be fishing, right? Because some of that too matters what type of line you're going to be throwing. Delta, Clear Lake, especially, right? Like, hey, are we going to be fishing and up in this stuff? I might tell somebody, hey, be ready, because we're going to be four-wheeling.
Yeah, and ask them, like, is it a long run, short run? Like, those kind of things, right? Like, so let's say, for instance, I'm good in the winter with X amount of clothing on.
Right.
Okay? But if we're running all the way to the other end of the lake, by the time we get down there, it's going to be cold. The other thing, my best advice for all of that is, if it's in the back half of the year, let's just say October-ish, late October through March, May.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, always bring rain jacket. Always bring rain gear.
Yeah.
Two things: breaks wind, so that you don't get cold as much, and then the other thing is, it's light, right? So you can stay warm while running.
Right.
And then the other thing is, if it does rain on you and you don't really pay attention to the weather or something, you're covered.
I've done that multiple times where I didn't pay attention to the weather. I thought it was going to be warmer. I didn't bring enough stuff. Sitting in the passenger seat and just. This is going to be cold.
I have one co-angler that I fish with quite consistently, not him, that will show up in a t-shirt and shorts, and it'll be like 40 degrees out.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and he's like, it's fine. I'll be okay. And he's like turning blue back there. And I'm like, dude, are you sure? And there's times where if I fish with him in the winter, I'll bring like an extra coat or something. Be like, here, put these on your legs while we're running.
Yeah. I've fished with a guy that one time in a December tournament that at Berryessa, wind was blowing, storm came in, it was pouring down rain. He didn't have any rain gear. He got soaking wet. We won the tournament, but he was soaked, right? Like, you learn in those things, you look for that gear that you want. And then when you're talking about gear, you don't have to get the top of the line stuff. Like, just enough. His gear that he's got is probably three times.
I will never buy that gear because I got it off a gift card. If I were to physically buy it, it's the Bass Pro Shops Extreme gear or whatever it is, guide gear. I would not buy it with my own money. It is amazing. In all reality, it's almost worth the money. It's just so flippin' expensive. Like if it was like $100 to $200 less, I would say it's worth the money.
And then for me, I have Carhartt Storm Defender gear, bibs and jacket, and they're about 120 to 150 bucks a piece.
But you got to remember, like, so I'm going to be wearing that extreme gear and running across the water. I'm, as a boater, not going to know that you are freezing your tootsie off
Right.
over there wearing your, what is that, frog togs or whatever it is,
Frog
where it's
togs
still breathable,
are
but it's
not
waterproof. They're not warm.
They're
like,
not warm.
Keep a little bit in mind when it comes to that.
Yeah. Be prepared for what shoes to wear.
Yeah.
Right, like
They're waterproof, or just go straight Crocs with no socks.
That happened. I'm not going to wear cowboy boots on somebody's boat, right? That's being considerate about somebody's boat.
For noise amount.
Noise amount, and then it's just rough, right? Like
a little slippery.
A little slippery. I'm not going to wear like straight, like hunting boots with big lugs that when you're walking around and it's been raining, and you're going to step into their boat and you got muddy feet stepping in their boat and it's leaving mud clumps, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to think about that type of stuff, think about their boat while you're
But with that said,
right? But you want something that's going to be warm, insulated, waterproof, that's going to take care of that.
that's a good point. I like that one point. Paul Lustino with an L, not a, he calls him Ustino.
It's Lustino. I said it right.
He says, I encourage my passenger to help watch for floating objects when running across the lake or delta at high speeds.
Yes.
Just fish with Paul, August Delta tournament. I normally tell people, hey, if you see something in the water as a co-angler, I want you to point at it and say something. I may have missed it.
Hey.
I don't care if you know I saw it. Just point at it and say, hey. Right? I did not even have to ask Paul to do that, and he already did that, and I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. But like that certain times of the year where I know there's a lot of floating stuff, I will tell co-anglers, I don't care if you think it's not in my boat lane of where I'm driving, just point at it when you see it.
Yeah.
And that's just little things that co-anglers can do that help your boater out.
Yeah.
Some people take it as offense, like, I know, I already saw that. That's not what it's meant. Just let them know, like, hey, I'm just making sure you know.
Yeah.
Because in all reality, you hit a log and that engine kicks up, you're just as liability as they are in the
How much is the lower end right now?
For those of you who don't know, that a lower end for a 250 Mercury 4-stroke is $13,200 plus shipping.
Perfect. Just thoughts. I would point it out for people. There's one that says, what about flip-flops? Some people wear flip-flops. Some people wear slides. Some people go barefoot. I don't like to do any of that. And on Sunday, there was I walked down to release my fish for the Mike Vaughn Classic. And there was a guy cutting his sock while I was walking down. He was wearing slides, and he was getting out of the boat and stepped on a Chapo hook and put a Chapo hook, buried the barb into the pad of his third toe, his middle toe, right? Yeah. And he was trying to figure out how to get it out, right?
When it comes to running anything besides fully enclosed shoes, like fully enclosed shoes with these, dad shoes here.
Those are dad shoes for sure.
Those fully enclosed shoes, you are running the risk of a hook.
Yeah.
If you're on there, if you're mindful of everything, like I'm barefoot on the boat all the time, but I specifically put my rods in certain things. I specifically, I have certain danger zones that I stay away from stuff. He doesn't go barefoot. It looks like he's wearing socks at all times.
I have white socks on if I take my shoes and socks off.
Maybe on vacation you might put a little bit of color on them tootsies.
No, because it's floral.
But for instance, flip-flops, there's two different versions of flip-flops. There's the flip-flops that you have traction with, and then there's the flip-flops that when they get wet turn into slip and slides.
Yeah. You don't want slip and slides.
Any shoes that turn into slip and slides when they get wet, not great ideas.
Yeah.
Because, all it takes is the fish splashing, and all of a sudden you take one step while netting and you're in the water and the fish is looking at you eye to eye.
Yeah.
Because you're both swimming now.
Yeah. Things to think about when you're out there, right? Like in that aspect too, like if you catch a catfish and you guys put it in the boat, which I try not to because they're so slimy, or I've caught with Big John 8-pound pike minnow, right? Squawfish. Those hit the boat and it's a slimy mess, right? Like you gotta pay attention to that type of stuff, especially moving up and down through somebody's boat, right? But the other thing is, another good safety thing is pay attention to how they start the boat, right? And how the boat runs. Because if something happens medically to the boater, you're the one that's going to be saving that person.
99% of the time, if you trim all the way down and just hit go, you can get up on pad. You won't be able to go fast.
No.
If you don't know how to trim, just leave it trimmed down.
Yep.
And keep driving and just plow through the water. Your steering's going to be tough, but if you back off the speed a little bit, you'll get your turning back, and then you can, when you get straight, you can go again, and that's a way you can get back. As a co-angler, if there's a medical emergency, I don't care how fast you get back, as long as we get back. If I'm the on either side of that.
On either side, yeah.
Just getting back, getting to help is the best of that.
Yeah. But knowing how to start somebody's boat, like if you're the co-angler, just pay attention or ask them, right? Some people have.
Yeah, he has touch pads. Like you dial in numbers and then hit start. Yeah. I don't even know what the code is. I just know that once he touches that buttons in the first time,
it's good.
It's good for that day. But I know how to start it and I know how to run it. And like some older boats have little corks to it.
Yeah.
And you just find out what those corks are, and then go from there. One of the things that I had just remembered from Delta is co-anglers tend to put their rods on the next to the passenger seat. Mm-hmm. If you put a crankbait hanging off the end of your rod, treble hooks hanging, and you drive past the Thule, those treble hooks are going to grab that Thule and possibly pull that rod, if not all your rods, out. So always make sure to keep your baits inside the boat, near the reel, away from the seats.
If I have rods out the back as a co-angler, and I know we're going in four-wheeling, right? Like that's what I call four-wheeling, through trees in Berryessa or at Clear Lake, or through Thules and stuff in the Delta. And I have rods back there, I'll go move my rods more towards the middle of the boat.
Yep.
That way I know that they're less likely to get hooked onto something, because they'll even if you don't have your hook out there, they will catch an eye or that line and try to pull that rod out of the boat.
And those Thules aren't hanging away. Like they'll actually hang into the boat and go down. Trees, same thing, going down with trees.
All things to think about, all things to pay attention to, right? Like as a co-angler, I always looked at my partner's rods in the front of the boat or his net, or making sure that they pulled the trolling motor up before you start running, because that's a thing.
Yeah.
If you guys have not ever seen that,
some people are worse at that than others. And then the other thing is like find out where they like to keep the net. Yeah. Where they want to keep the net. Like I have a very specific spot that I keep my net.
Do you have pliers? That's a good one. Where
their pliers are. That would be the other thing, is when you get done using the pliers, put them back.
Yeah.
When you get done using the scissors, put them back. Those are the little things that a boater will want you to be back on their boat later on. Like the more you pay attention to these little things, the more they're going to be like, it was seamless. Like I fish with you all day. Like, and all you have to do is just, my work will be proud of me. Situational awareness.
Yes.
You just be situationally.
Is that a safety meeting that you just went through?
That I didn't go to this morning.
Well, good job. But like,
I got the alert when I woke up.
But that type of stuff. Another thing to think about is bringing a pair of scissors or snips or something to cut your lines. Right. Don't rely on that boater. Have a pair of pliers somewhere. Like for a long time,
some boaters do not have good scissors.
I wore like Carhartt pants, and I put a pair of needle nose that I could cut stuff in my pocket, right? Like they're cargo type pants, right? So I had that type of stuff with me so I could just use my stuff and not have to bother with them, because sometimes you don't know what they have in their boat, right? Like you don't know if the scissors are sharp. You don't know if the pliers actually work or if they have pliers, right? Like some people don't. There was a time where, depending on if I was fishing with somebody new, being the president and not having a boat, and I fished with somebody like a prospective member that has a boat, I might bring a flat board so we can measure fish with me, right? Like, or my scale. I'd bring a scale and put it in my bag, right? And I'd be prepared in case we needed it, right? If they didn't have it. But those are all things that you think about, or once you start co-angling, or if you're learning, paying attention to.
Some of that is knowing who you're fishing with too, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of goes back to knowing who you're fishing with, and some of that is not knowing who you're fishing with and what you bring. And when you were talking about your Carhartts, I wasn't laughing at you and putting stuff in your pockets. I was laughing at the comment that said, that's a big word for Elmo for the situational awareness part.
That is. Getsy also says first aid kit. I had that this year where a co-angler took a Chapo to the finger with a hook on it. And I
feel like people in Chapos around you were a bad decision.
Hey, I'm telling you what, a Chapo with a fish on it, and if it's a smaller fish, I'm talking like that 8 to 12 inch range, when they start flipping around, depending on how they're hooked, there's like that much throw.
Well, they do know karate. So.
Yeah, there's like that much throw in those Chapo hooks. And after he got hooked and I fished another day with the Chapo, and I caught a small fish, and it started flipping around, and I was like, ooh, that's how that happened, right?
Yeah.
But I had to pull, I did the braid trick.
Topwater fish are notorious for, I've stuck myself with a,
I popped, yes, it was a spook.
Spook Junior?
I popped it out of his finger. As soon as I popped it out of his finger, there was blood everywhere, right? And I didn't have a first aid kit in the boat. Now I do carry a first aid kit in the boat. But
I mean, as far as the co-angler wise, they have the little, it's kind of like ID card or credit card size. It's just got
Band-Aids,
basic stuff in there. A couple of Band-Aids, a little strip of gauze.
Now I carry
like some Neosporin, little like soft packets.
I carry a bigger first aid kit. Had to bust into it on Thursday for that person that took a hook to the toe to cover that toe. But
those are little things you can bring.
You can bring to provide for yourself. Bring water.
Yes.
Bring water.
Always bring enough fluids for you to survive the entire day. Bring food for you to survive the entire day.
Yep.
Heat stroke is no joke.
Yeah, it is
and
a thing.
A boater will not be paying attention to whether you're getting heat stroke signs or not. They're going to be fishing.
You don't pay attention?
And not reminding you, hey, have you drank water today?
Yeah.
They'll remember to drink water. And if you are a co-angler and you see your boater drink water, now's a great time as a reminder. And vice versa. If you see your co-angler drinking water,
Gatorade,
drink water some yourself.
Powerade, something, but yeah.
Big John says bring plenty of bananas.
Yeah, be careful about
to keep your potassium levels
There's
up.
some people that are super skeptical about.
There's stories from back in the day in the club where one of the anglers was very superstitious with bananas.
Yeah.
And another fellow club member showed up with a bushel of bananas and hid them throughout the boat in all the compartments while that person was paying entry or going to the bathroom or whatever they were doing. Hid those bananas in places so deep that their boat started smelling funny a couple weeks later because of the rotting banana.
Yeah.
So if you do play the plank, at least make sure they found all the bananas.
Yeah. But be careful with bananas. I'm a believer though. Like
donuts are also a no-no. Anything that resembles ones and zeros.
Oh.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But also your snacks that you are thinking about getting, make sure there's snacks that aren't going to be like messy, like they're crumbly and they're falling all over the boat. Like, you know what I mean? Like You don't want a bunch of crumbs.
I think I just figured out why I stopped winning tournaments.
What?
I stopped bringing donuts.
I know.
Remember I used to bring donuts all the time?
Donuts all the time. Yeah.
I switched over to the Bon Appetit.
The pastries. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to switch back to donuts and see what happens.
Yeah.
When I started the
Superstitious.
streak of actually figuring out how to fish, I bought a pack of donuts all the time. Gas station chickens for on the way back.
Yeah, because they don't open in time for us to
Yeah,
get them.
they're not
Unless
open.
it's in the wintertime.
Or a afternoon run.
Or afternoon run.
Yeah.
Gas station chicken is definitely is
And
one
that's
of the things.
crispy crunchy chicken, if you guys don't know.
Yeah.
Definitely keep them in business because we want to eat that also.
Yes, all the time.
Chicken tenders, their little biscuit. Oh, all of it's good.
Yeah.
They are originated out of Louisiana, so you know it actually has flavor.
Yeah. There's one in the Oaks. There's one in Winters on your way to Berryessa. There's one in Sassoon on your way out. If you're in this area, we might know where a couple
We
gas
might have
station
them
chickens
mapped
are.
in relation
Yeah.
to where we fish. Maybe.
Yeah.
Might.
And they're
Maybe.
good cold. They're good warm. They're
It's a good day, all day snack when you
yeah,
can.
gas station chicken.
I mean, I think that's pretty much covered most of it. We're going to probably cover some more. We're going to do it on the boater side also.
Yeah.
Of kind of what boaters could do to help co-anglers and all sorts of stuff like that.
I do want to talk about something else too. Is one of the things that I like to do, and like going back to what I was asking, like James. I would tell James, like, what are you thinking? Well, when I'm saying what are you thinking, I'm not trying to like put stuff in their mind, but I'm trying to like
grow on it,
right? Like, all right, so we caught a fish on this rock over here. We caught this fish on this rock over here. We caught this fish on this rock over here. All the other times we didn't catch any fish, there was no rock.
And then the other thing, so then you ask your co-angler and you're like, hey, or the boater says, hey, what are we, like, we keep fishing rock, but now we're not catching them. And then the co-angler says, yeah, but there was deep water next to that rock every single time.
Yeah.
And there's something that you said that clicks with them and you work together. Right. And all of a sudden, bam, now we need rock with deep water. Oh, we start putting together the rest of the pattern.
Right.
Like when I ask a co-angler, hey, what should we do? Like, I'm usually swinging, missing, having troubles. I'm looking for something outside of my brain that could either connect a dot or go run down.
But like talking fishing theories, right? Like, how are you catching them? Where, if you're not catching them, how can we adjust, right? What have we not fished for like Clear Lake? Hey, we've been fishing natural shores, this and that. Why don't we fish some docks, right? Maybe we need to go to docks, or maybe we need to go to do this. Maybe we should go offshore. Different things. And then another thing that like I pay attention to when I'm fishing Clear Lake is I'm going down and we're fishing docks. Which poles are wood poles and which ones are metal poles on docks? Why is there a difference? I don't know. But is there a difference? Absolutely.
Yep. And some days are one way and some days are the other days.
I don't know which one, but pay attention to those little things and talk to your boater about it, right? Like, hey, did you notice we just caught a fish on that wood piling? And then we didn't catch for next 3 docks, and then this wood piling, that was wood piling again, and we caught 3 fish here.
A lot of the times your boater is going to go, man, you are just killing them today. And then you're like, yeah, I'm only throwing at wood.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I didn't think of that. And then all of a sudden, both of you guys are catching fish.
Correct. Always talk fish theories, because not only are you talking fish theories and you're patterning out the day, but if they say something, it's like watching a YouTube video. It's like listen to a podcast. They might say something that just, boom, that makes sense.
Yeah, like recently there was a Delta video that I was watching an interview with Ken Ma, and then I connected that with something MDJ said, and then connected that with my own experiences, and I put all 3 of them together, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm stupid. And start running down that thing, and then it worked for like a month.
Yeah.
And then it all fell apart because, well, you know, it's the Delta. It all falls apart.
There's a comment, wood docks. Maybe there's more growth on the wood, which would be more bugs, which would be more bait fish eating the bugs, which would be more bigger fish eating the bait fish.
More ecosystem, more all that.
That could be a thing, right? Like, there's different things that you could talk to your co-angler and get those theories. And I'm telling you, like, the day will go by faster if you're able to talk about those theories.
Good live tonight, making a BR run. It's ice cream time.
It's ice
Can't
cream
listen
already.
to fishing anymore. It's ice cream time.
But talking those theories is going to make the day go faster. You guys are going to learn a lot more from each other. And then, great times.
Yeah. So, realistically, bullet points for all of it. Open communication.
Yep.
Ask questions. Pay attention / listen. If your boater is willing to talk, soak it up like a sponge. Pay attention to them. If they've mentioned something to you like, hey, you know, you should probably throw a Cinco right now, and you haven't, you should probably pick up a Cinco. That kind of goes back into the communication, all that other stuff. Have forethought. Pay attention to that forethought, right? Like what's going to happen next, what's going like that. And then, importantly, pay attention to what they missed. Look for the little details, the pockets they didn't hit, the deep water, like I said, you know, hey, we keep catching them on rock, and you're like, no, it needs deep water. Like, be as involved as the person in front of you so that you're able to make that decisions or help make decisions or help offer things when that comes around. And then that will also ultimately let you be a better person is fishing wise and gets you to that elevated level of stepping into the boat side instead of the co-angler side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like both of us have done, is going through that co-angler. I was co-angler for
years.
I think I was even president while co-angling. In fact, I know I was president.
I was 100% a president of the Bass Reapers for years, and then I bought a boat.
Yeah.
I was a backseater.
Yep. Same thing with your dad was.
Treasure for
with Floyd, which will be a future Legends.
Yes.
This weekend, we are probably going to Malone's on Saturday, and we'll have a video next Wednesday for Malone's. Let's hope we do really well.
Yeah.
Just, you know, putting it out there on live.
It's a spot Bass Lake.
I think we'll catch fish, so just hopefully we catch something good. The weekend after that, he will be on vacation. I will be going to, I believe it's Pardee and Tulloch. That may be subject to change, but it's going to be that area, somewhere in that ballpark. So I'll have videos for maybe one of those, maybe two of those. I'm not sure which ones. Hopefully both.
Hopefully both.
Hopefully both.
You should
but
do
yeah,
one no matter what.
Some things that aren't Delta. Our next tournament is Delta the end of next month. Just trying to get away from Delta, realistically. Yeah. So that's what's coming up with that. Probably going to have some Strait Legends videos in the next couple of weeks or so. So a lot of cool things coming out. Again, if you guys have not checked out the Strait Legends video, check out Big John's or John Kurgan's one. Really cool to kind of throw it back, see that nostalgia. He talks a lot about how the old Delta was.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see some relations now with how much they're nuking the weeds right now.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. Stay tuned for everything. And you got anything else?
Yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to James on Instagram or YouTube, leave a comment. Other than that, if you guys have any suggestions for videos or anything like that.
Any suggestion for lives? We will do a boater side, like I said. And then, dang it, I had another live. I don't remember what it was. Anyways, we'll get into that stuff. It's all coming in the future. Comment down below. Ask any questions you want. Hit me up on Instagram, like Brian said. And until next time, I hope you get them.